Hi, my name is Ashley Chirayil, and I just had the honor of being able to talk to my favorite host, Shantae Kinney, about how to be able to move up to that next level of your life and regain opportunities, even if you don't feel like they're there, finding ways to be able to rediscover it and setting yourself up to be able to see things in your life as commas and not periods. Looking forward to seeing you guys here. Bye-bye.
So today I had Chinese food. And as part of that Chinese food, I received a fortune cookie. And I don't normally read them, but today I decided to read my fortune cookie. And this is what it said. It said, in life, it's good not to get too comfortable. Serendipity, huh? Tonight, we are talking about how to overcome discomfort and move forward in your life. I am Shantae, the host of Next Level Conversations, and I want to thank you for joining me on tonight. If you are a person who wants to go forward in life, but you find yourself constantly being stuck, it could be that you have placed yourself in a position where being uncomfortable is not really the thing to do. And that's okay, because we all do it. Tonight, I have the pleasure of being joined by clinical social worker Ashley Chirayil. I said that right?
Yes, you did.
Who is going to be talking with us and providing us with tips on how to overcome discomfort. Ashley is a licensed clinical social worker who offers mental health services in her private practice, Seeds of Healing, Health, and Wellness. She specializes in working with individuals who struggle with self-esteem, relationship dynamics, and establishing boundaries. She works with young adults, and couples via virtual telehealth sessions. She's not, clairvoyant. Through the 8 years she has spent in the social service industry, she realizes the need for a holistic approach in an effective therapeutic environment and is presently pursuing her holistic practitioner certification to incorporate in session. Ashley is determined to support you in your journey to discovering an empowered and healed version of yourself. Please join me in welcoming this evening Miss Ashley Chirayil.
Thanks for having me.
How are you, my darling?
I am fabulous. Happy to be here.
It's always an honor to have you in the studio. Thank you for being a returning guest. And we love your wisdom and your knowledge. And you just look so cute. How are you?
Fabulous.
Okay, so before we dive into this very wonderful conversation, which has been sparking a lot of talk amongst our community, will you tell our audience just a little bit more? I know I just read your bio, but can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and about your practice?
So I'm a therapist that typically kind of focuses on what people feel are things that they're just not able to work around on their own. And so I really believe in meeting people where they're at on whatever it is that they think for whatever reason it's not clicking. So for me, it's very much so like a safe space, and it's a place where you cultivate a relationship that can go for not only therapy sessions, but later on in life too. So as soon as we meet all our goals, we do everything we need to do. Sometimes years later, like people will come back, they're like, something new is here, don't know how to tackle it. And we're here, we've got that rapport, and we're good to go. Sometimes I have people where they've reached everything and they may just want to check in monthly, every now and then, just to be like, hey, still got it going. These are all the great things that we have. And I think it's a good way to be able to continue to remember to invest in yourself. I think that's what therapy is all about. And so that's what I try to invoke in the people that I work with.
Oh, and you've been doing this for 8 years?
Yes.
And is therapy something you've always wanted to do?
Yes, honestly. I think it's something that I've been doing when I was little, like a lot of random people, like with my friends or with people in my community, whatever. It's something where, for whatever reason, people would come to me and they'd ask me questions and I'd be like, I feel like I can give them an answer, but I wonder if there's something deeper to this because I feel like for the longest time I've understood just how much control our mind has on
Mm-hmm.
our day to day, and how sometimes if we don't get a grasp of it, it can hurt us. And
Mm.
so that's what inspired me to be able to go to school so that as we go through life's obstacles, which are inevitable, we have the skills that we need to be able to enhance and get through obstacles successfully.
You know what? And that's good, because that's actually going to take us right into what we're talking about on tonight. Because this topic came about. I was having a conversation with a few ladies in our small community group, and we were just talking about some of the things that keep us stuck and keep us from progressing forward, reaching out, doing more. And a lot of the common things was, I hate, and everybody just kept saying it, I hate being uncomfortable. I hate being uncomfortable. And so as we were talking, we got to realizing that our comfort zones is what keeps us from going forward. And so I said, you know what? I think this will be a great topic, and I know just the person to talk with us about it. So that's what I want to talk about. The first thing I want to ask you, can you just kind of describe what our comfort zones look like? And I want to do it, I want to focus on it mentally, even spiritually, emotionally, and physically, what our comfort zones look like, because not everybody can immediately recognize when they've settled into their comfort zone.
And I think it's also the first step in being able to establish when you're in a place of, I guess, redundant discomfort, comfort,
Mm.
because sometimes you can be in a comfortable period just because you got through something that was uncomfortable. So you need to be able
Mm.
to allow yourself to sit in comfortable periods to be able to recharge, reheal, and set yourself up for the next challenge or thing that you're trying to pursue for yourself. But I think the biggest way to be able to understand when you're at a point of being too comfortable is by being in tune with yourself and knowing that there's nothing exciting going on in the day to day. I truly believe that for us, life is an adventure. The most valuable thing that we have that we can offer anybody and offer ourselves is time. And so, as long as we're still here, as long as we're still living and breathing, there's something expected of us. There's something more, there's something greater that we can do. And I think for us, sometimes we get caught up in a lot of different areas of life. If it's work, sometimes we're super enveloped in work and we're just like, oh, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to get a promotion.
Mhm.
Sometimes we're super invested in our family, in our kids, in our partners. Sometimes we're invested in our community. Sometimes we're just invested in ourselves personally, where it's like we get into a routine of just doing X, Y, Z, and
Mhm.
it's just familiar. It's almost
Mm.
like everything is predictable.
You know what? There was a point in time when I went the start of my journey at the very beginning. And I hadn't noticed it, but what you just said is really true, because I got to a point where I knew what every day was. I knew what every year was going to look like. I knew what everybody was going to say. I knew what the message was going to be. I knew what I was going to do every day. I knew, and it was just continue, continue, continue. And if I'm honest with myself, which I had to be at the time, I was just bored in life. There was no adventure. There were no new experiences, but I had settled into, I'm not going to say, I had just become too comfortable. And as a result of becoming too comfortable, I let a whole lot of things go. I missed a lot of things. I ignored a lot of signs, but I got comfortable. And it was good for a little bit.
Mhm.
It was good because that's what you reach for.
Right.
You reach for a comfortable place.
Mhm.
So in order to, I had to shake up that comfort. I
Yeah.
did. So how do you work with your clients in identifying, okay, you've become, and what does adventure look like?
So for everybody, it just kind of depends on what season of life that they're in. But I think for whenever they feel like, usually people, when they come to therapy, they know something is off. They just don't know what it is.
Mm.
And sometimes it takes a big shift to be able to get out of that discomfort. And sometimes it takes something really small. I think people really feel like if you go to therapy or something like that, it's like, oh, this big radical thing is going to happen. Like, oh, it's going to be like, I'm going to I'll be this person. And the next time someone sees me, they might not even recognize me. But it's about if you can notice it in your body and in your mental, the different changes that are happening in you, it kind of goes a long way. So in therapy, depending on whatever people's goals are, we'll start with that as the basics. They may be like, I want to be able to work on anxiousness going out into public places. I want to be able to work on being able to speak up for myself at the job or with some people around us. I might want to work on physical goals that I have for myself. And so I feel like based on that, there's other layers that come with it. And the goal is always to do something small and build that confidence. It's not something crazy. Like for women, statistically, we are more prone to being able to develop anxiety disorders. And so if someone had agoraphobia, they're scared of going outside of their house, going in public spaces and stuff. The first step would be, depending on the level of agoraphobia, walk up to your front door. How do you feel? Because if you go to your front door, depending on where you live, sometimes you could hear the commotion of people outside. You can hear dogs barking. You could hear people driving. If that's comfortable, walk outside your front door.
Ooh. Okay, that's so and what you're doing is you're creating new comfort levels. And so you get into that. We're going to take this one step, walk to your front door. We're going to get comfortable with that, maybe doing that a couple of times and get comfortable with that. And then we go to our next level. And you know what? I didn't even think about the fact that, and you know, when people have to move out, when people have to shift in their life, and I don't say have to, but when people make the decision to shift, or a lot of people want to shift, it just causes them so much anxiety because we've become so used to our comfort, this little world, this little space right here. We've become so used to it. So I didn't even think about that.
It's one of those things. I feel like just in the world that we live in, comfort is always something that's encouraged and promoted. It goes even as simple as back, maybe not too long ago, we'd be at a grocery store. We would go in person to pick out our groceries. We'd go in person to do so many things. But now everything is available to us virtually. We can have it delivered. We can have it shipped. We can do all these things within the confines of our house. And so I think by us being able to have that access to convenience, it's kind of made discomfort more unsettling than it was before. Versus before, like it was uncomfortable all the time. Like we'd be doing different things. Like even if you're in school, the teacher would call on your name and they'd be like, hey, what's the answer? You'd be like, what? Like you'd have to speak in front of people.
Yeah, you were so used to, that's a good point. We were so used to being uncomfortable. And then did we just start thinking?
I think for a lot of us too, like I think COVID was a big thing also. We got so used to being isolated in certain areas. We got very cautious being around a lot of people. We're so used to being in the confines of our home that like all of a sudden being able to be out and about and doing all that type of stuff. I don't think people give enough credit to that. We went through a crazy thing.
Yeah.
It takes a while to be able to get past that and move on and act like, you know, this is us moving forward, continuing to do what we did prior.
Okay, and that's and I agree with you. That's a really big, COVID was a really big thing and it's a big stretch. And so moving forward from that, I totally get that. But what about just like, I don't want to go to school, or I've become so comfortable in life, but we long for so much more.
So part of that kind of comes in whenever we get into like a cycle of we're at this point in our life, we know what's going to happen in the morning, we know what's going to happen in the evening. Sometimes a lot of us, like when we were kids at school, like one of the main questions they asked us was like, what are you going to be when you grow up?
Yeah.
And we all had like these crazy ideas. Like for me, I wanted to be one of those people in SeaWorld that was swimming with Shamu. That was the dream. Okay. For me, for the longest time, I love animals. That was the calling. So since then, obviously you get older and then you just kind of get into like a mindset of like, what is the practical thing to do?
Oh, and you know, there it is right there.
Mm,
That's how it gets us.
yeah. Because we would sometimes, like when you get older, you don't get the opportunity in that moment to be like, oh, let me like explore this. How would it feel if I totally went away from what people traditionally do around me and try to do this? Because either we don't have support from people around us, no one else has done it, or there can even be people around us who kind of discourage it because they don't get it. They don't see the vision.
And you're so right. And that's what lulls you into the quote unquote comfortable life or into the routine. And I started, me myself, I started feeling like a robot.
Yeah.
Like, and I would always say to myself, there has to be more. There has to be more. A comfortable state of thinking, you know, and don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with it, but you know, I just go to church every Sunday.
Yeah.
There was just there was no spark, but that's what you were supposed to, you know, that's what you're taught that you're supposed to do. And this is the comfort. And it becomes hard breaking that because you start thinking about all the responsibilities and all the people and all the places that's going to be upset. And so you find yourself staying in it a whole lot longer than you actually would, and you just become a shell of yourself. Have you had clients that experienced that?
So much so, I feel like so many adults deal with shame. A lot of us are kind of like, oh, we're at this point, whatever point we're at in our life, more often than not, we anticipated us being in a different position.
Yeah.
It's not like how, like, at 26, I plan to be married. At 27, I want to have a kid. At 28, I want to have a house. I want to move to this place. We all have these little dreams and goals, especially for us girls. Like, we always have these things that we fantasize about. And so sometimes when you don't meet those marks when you anticipated, you get discouraged. And you just kind of sit in, oh, like, I was unsuccessful. I don't know if I need to go out there again because I was unsuccessful. But I think that's where kind of it starts, and it's the thing that we need to jump from. Just because we were unsuccessful that one time doesn't mean we're not going to be unsuccessful. We're going to be unsuccessful again.
But see, and when you talk about being comfortable and fighting this discomfort, that's a even that thought process is a part of your that becomes a comfortable way of thinking. I wasn't successful, so I'm going to stay right here and not shake it. That's a comfortable mindset that you go into. And that's one of the things that I realized about myself. I was writing, you know, I started writing down what are comfortable thoughts that you continue to return to. And one of them was, not going, you know, this ain't gonna work for me. This is not gonna work for me. That's a comfortable mindset.
Yeah.
And it's real hard work to break that comfortable mindset. Let me ask you this. How can being too comfortable be damaging to your life?
More often than not, you find that the things that you previously enjoyed, you no longer enjoy as much. Sometimes you beat down those things that you established in your day to day to the point that the things that we do aren't giving us that same satisfaction, that same outlet, that same release. Because even though there's those consistent things that you might like to do, you might like to work out on a regular basis, that's not the solution for every emotion that you juggle on the day to day. You may need to come up with something different. It could be journaling. It could be something totally random. It could be crocheting. You could paint. You could just go on a walk, talk to people. There has to be a variety of things that you look forward to in your day to day. By exploring new things, who knows what you're going to be successful in? Once you see that success, that's what helps build that confidence to be able to say, yes, I'm going to do that. Instead of being like, oh no, like, it's okay. That's not me. It wasn't you then. It could be
But
you now.
how do you get over the that's not me?
A lot of that, if it's something where within you it's hard to come to that place alone, the people around you are magical tools in that. Ideally, you have someone that you look up to around you. You have someone that inspires you. You have someone that, even though you're not there, you're just like, I want to be able to do something like that. Like for me, you're an inspiration. We've got our own little circle of people where it's like there's so many things that this person decides to do. Where it's like, I wouldn't have even thought of doing that, but maybe I need to sit with myself. Like, what do I want
Yeah.
to do next? And it's like, it's not even like a constant, what am I going to do next? What is the big thing? Sometimes it's just the people around you will make you want to have that check in with yourself to
Mm.
be like, oh, would I want to do something like that? It plants a seed.
So you have to also change your environment.
You do.
That's uncomfortable.
It
So,
is.
and see, every step of this, I want to talk about because, some people know I need to change my environment. How do I get comfortable changing my environment?
I think a big thing that we have to be at peace with is long-term growth, sustainable growth doesn't come from being comfortable. It,
So, that's so true.
you're going to have to be at a point where you have an anxious thought. You're going to be frustrated with yourself. You got those heart palpitations, whatever it is. If you feel that, if anything, that should be your cue to be like, oh, I'm doing exactly what I should be doing. This is
Mm.
an area of my life that I haven't addressed or tapped into yet. So let me sit in this a little bit longer and see how I feel. And if you can feel comfortable doing that just with yourself, then do it with the people that you're close with. If you feel comfortable doing it with them, then maybe you get on a podcast and start talking to people about it. You know what I mean? Eventually it gets over there, but it's not something you plan to do. You get invited and then it's like it clicks instead of the natural gravity to be like, no, that's weird. That's uncomfortable. You're just like, well,
Yeah.
why not?
Yeah. So can I get a little personal with you
Yes.
real quick? How has there ever been a situation in your life where you've had to realize I've gotten too comfortable and now it's time for me to do something? And if so, what are some of the things that you did? Can you tell us about the situation? And then what are some of the things that you did and how did you have any resistance? Because a lot of resistance comes, at least personally, when I talk about this, I'm talking about personally for myself. There is a lot of resistance that comes when I'm trying to get out of comfortable into the uncomfortable, because the uncomfortable is unknown.
Mhm.
There's so many uncertainties that you just like, yeah, I don't want to do that. But has there been a situation in your life where you've had to? You see, I'm talking, so I'm giving you a moment to think about something.
I got you. I got it.
Man.
So one of the biggest challenges that I had was whenever I was in my first social work job. I was in a hospital. It was a very stressful time just walking between the floors and working with different patients and kind of adjusting to being a social worker for the first time because as much as the stuff you learn in school, it's very different from what you do like in the actual workforce. And so it just so happened that that also kind of was around the time that COVID started too. So there was so many precautions. There were so many different things we had to be aware of. There were units that you'd have to go to where, people were sick and all this type of stuff. And there was a lot of heavy stuff. People passed away every day. People like you saw their families and like how broken it was or how little support somebody had, where it was just devastating on the mind to be able to see things like that.
Oh.
And sometimes if there's other colleagues or people in departments that you had to work with, that was they weren't getting where you were coming from. It was hard to be able to speak up and be like, no, I actually think this is what this person needs. It ended up being something that was so bottled up to where thankfully at the time I had coworkers that I could bounce these ideas back on and they were able to show me like, honestly, like that's something that we kind of deal with too. But what I noticed was for them, they had outlets. They had found things that they did outside of work that made it so that they had enough energy to be able to come back again. And unfortunately, because there were so many limiting things to do back then, like a physical outlet was probably the quickest way to get it all out. And so for me, one of the girls had just casually mentioned, like, oh, right across the street, there's a boxing gym. You should go check it out. I went to a class, it was kind of fun. I was like, that's crazy. What am I going to do with some gloves? You know what I mean? And so I went into a class, and after that, I felt lighter.
Really?
But it took a long time. It wasn't the first time she told me to go to boxing that I just did it. She kept reminding me, kept reminding me. And then it got to be at a point where I was crying, I was frustrated, and I was like, honestly, I'm tired of crying. I need something different. This isn't enough for me.
So do you think that, and I always say this, the thing that we have our allegiance to, let's call it, we're putting our allegiance to comfort. do you think it has to betray, that comfortable place has to pretty much betray you, almost kick you out before you make the decision to, I got to do something different and there's no other choice? Do you think it has to get to that level?
Well, for me at the time it did, because I had a very stubborn personality. I was like, nah, it's fine. It's just a hospital. I've been around hospitals my entire life doing different things. It's all good. So I needed that kick in the butt where I was just like, I feel depleted. I need a big shift. And boxing was a big shift for me. But there's other people where it's like, sometimes they just need someone to tell them, you got to change it up. What if we did this instead of this? And they're just so willing to hear it that they can take it from there. They have that autonomy. They have that discernment to be able to be like, leave it. Let me see how this feels.
Do you think the point of at the point of change that comes when you're making this shift from I keep saying discomfort, but at the point of change, at that crossroad of change, and it's time to do something different and walk into the unknown, because when you anything new that you do, it's a whole new experience. It's totally new. You're breaking out of what's been normal, and you're going into this uncomfortable place. I've forgotten my question. I done talked so much. I done overthought my question in my head.
It's okay.
I hate when I do that. I do. Y'all don't talk about me. Do not talk about me. Overthought my question has gone completely out of my head. But because you said something at the end, and I need to get my question back, because you said that they just needed somebody to just tell them. Do you think that when you're at that place, whether you recognize it or not, where you're ready for change, you're more susceptible to receive and take that step into, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do it, because she suggested it, and the soil is so ready in my life for something new.
Yeah, because I think at that point you're in survival mode, and all the things you've done at that point is not working. And so the only way, you're just like, okay, well, let me try and see what this person's telling us to do. You know what I mean? It's like, what's the harm at that point? If it's wrong, like say they tell you to do something and you try and you're not successful with it, okay, at least I tried something different.
Ashley, you just said a mouthful, girl, because no, for real, you just said a mouthful, because you are so right. You literally do go into survival mode, but how do you sustain that? How do you continue into that? Because some of this change doesn't happen quickly, and you want to go back. I mean, like it's something new and exciting. Okay, I'm going to try this, but I'm not seeing immediate results. So now I'm gonna go back to what I was doing. How do you sustain that?
I think it's one of those things where it's like, once you have a momentum, you have to be able to sit with yourself and see what is a reasonable amount of time that I'm willing to dedicate to myself outside of the people around us. Either it's every day or it's every week. Ideally, it's every day. You can at least set a little bit of time for yourself. We got a whole 24 hours. You got to be able to set a little bit of time for yourself. And in that time, just as much as you invest in your career and your family and all the other external stuff, you got to be able to invest a little bit just in you.
Yeah.
Even if it is for like your personal goals, even if it's for your spiritual goals. A lot of times, whenever you go through these obstacles, if you do have some sort of spiritual inclination where it's ideally like with religion, if you have a certain faith and stuff, it kind of promotes a positive sort of thinking where even in times of loneliness and despair and things of that nature, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It gives you that hope. And so if you have that, that's one of the biggest tools that can keep carrying you. Where it's like, even if you feel like you don't have it, you know who you believe in does.
Yeah. And let me ask you this: how do you? And Taylor was on the show not too long ago. She's the third wheel in our three piece. She was on the show not too long ago, and I asked her this question as we get ready to take a quick break. I want to leave this question. I want to give you a few moments to ponder this question as we go to a break, and I'm also going to open up the conversation to our audience and get some questions. But as we get ready to head into this break, how do you, a big shift, how do you handle your clients who are in a spiritual place of comfort, but they know that they need to do some changing, and it's too rowdy to move into something else? Okay, so that's the question. Read the question back to me when we come back, but we're going to take a break. And that's the question that's going to be pending.
I got you. All right.
We will be right back. Okay, we are back. We are back. I sure hope you remember my question. Before you answer my question, the question that was pending, I want to take this opportunity to open up the conversation that we've been having about how to overcome discomfort. We have Ashley Chirayil here, who is, as y'all said in the comments, she's dropping all sorts of good gems on us. So I want to take this opportunity to open up the chat to our audience. If you have any questions, anything you want to ask Ashley, anything you want to say to Ashley, please let me know. Got my trusty phone here so I can answer your questions. But y'all have to wait because Ashley's about to answer my question. Do I need to read it back to you?
I got it.
Okay, good.
So we
I'll
were talking.
remember.
We're talking about how if we have a person that we work with in session and they feel blocked spiritually, and they feel like they're not growing into whatever they need, they feel like they could be doing a little bit more because they've already tapped into that and they've kind of decided for themselves, this is an area that I feel like could be beneficial to me. More often than not, we can set goals in session in relation to their spirituality. Because a lot of people have so many different faiths, but I feel like in a lot of faiths, a lot of the core beliefs are the same. Like doing good to other people, giving back to the community, being able to put out the best version of yourself, being able to be humble, empathetic, all those types of things. And all those little pieces for them. Whereas for someone, it might be in the morning, you just journal. For these people, it may just be in the morning, you read a scripture, you reflect, you see how you feel about it, or you read whatever other book you practice with, you know what I mean? And you reflect on it then. It's a very easy thing to incorporate in session if that is something that you want to tap into.
I'm going to tell you one of the things that I am hearing you say very consistently throughout our conversation is in order to make the move in the change in your life, everything requires you being personally active in your life. You keep seeing a whole lot of sitting with yourself, reflecting. It requires you to be present for you in order to move forward. I mean, am I on point? Because that's all I keep hearing you. I know we get this outside help, but a lot of people, and myself included, at one point, my story was I wasn't showing up for myself. I was showing up for everybody else. And I was so bored in life because I wasn't sitting with me. I wasn't reflecting on me. I wasn't being active in my own life. But it requires you to be present for yourself.
It's hard to be present if you've never done it before. But it's one of those things that usually the people around us, especially if you're a spiritual person, if you feel like you're lost and you don't know what way to go about it and stuff, there is a thing about timing where it's like at the right time when you're sitting with yourself, you're feeling lost and flustered, something may come across that you're just like, oh, like it gives you like a little itch in the back of your mind to be like, maybe this is something that I need to dig into a little bit deeper. But if you're not in tune enough with yourself to be able to acknowledge, that's an itch I should be looking into versus all the other itches of life that we have. That's kind of challenging. Sometimes it's realistic to be able to be like, if we don't have that, if we don't have that discernment yet to be like, what can I do to get there? A lot of that comes with when we have that one-on-one time with ourselves and we're trying to see like how we were talking about like different opportunities for ourselves, like maybe career wise, talking to other people and like putting our voice out there and the information we want to give to other people. What is our strength? What is the thing that we were given that we just have a natural gift for? If we don't know what that is, because more often than not, we don't acknowledge it, what are the people around us telling us that we're good at?
Okay.
Sometimes they're a really good reflection of us. Where if we got some close friends that we have, and if they say something casually, if they're just like, oh my God, I love how supportive you are, like, oh, you're so good at this. Wow, how can I be better at this the way that you do? Maybe that's our thing. If we find that thing that we're good at that's just made specific to us, it makes it so that we have that interest, we have that drive, and we have like a little bit more incentive to be able to be like, let me set this little bit of time for myself to dig into something I'm interested in.
Yeah. And you're so right, because and sitting with ourselves, especially when it's something you are not taught to do, and considering yourself when it's something you're not accustomed to doing, it's very challenging to do. Can you give us, and I got a few questions sitting here, can you give us just a couple of ways that a person who is not used to that wants and they want to start learning, how what are some things that they can do to start doing it?
You mean sitting with yourself in what they want to do, like with their life next?
No, I'm just saying, just sitting with themselves, start listening and doing some. Okay, Shantae, you got to stop and you got to start thinking about you and hearing what you're saying and doing. You know what I'm saying? How does somebody make that shift? I can't even think about how. I can't even realize how I made the shift. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm sitting here while we're talking. I'm sitting here trying to think about it. I don't even know what steps I took to make that shift, to start being okay with sitting and start reflecting on myself.
So, one of the main things that us as humans are good at is being able to um, sit with our flaws. We're very aware of, oh, I struggle with this. Like, I'm terrible at this. I don't have this. I would say the first step would be to challenge those thoughts in our mind,
Ooh.
to be able to be like, why do we feel like we're so bad at this? Is there a reason? Has there been several accounts of, oh, wow, like I'm actually truly terrible at this? More often than not, it starts from something really small, and sometimes our thoughts just kind of escalate. We let the negative get carried away.
We become so comfortable with it.
Yes.
And I say this often, it's easier to believe a lie or something negative than it is to believe something positive.
And I think that with the amount of time that we sit with all of our flaws and all the things that we find frustrating about us, say it is a flaw that we do have. What can we do that actively works on that? What is something small that we can do that helps us get out of it? Because just because we have a flaw, like, okay, what are we going to do about it? You can't just be like, I have this flaw. We're still here. It means we got something to work on. That's what it comes down to. I think people are really good at that first step. What are the areas that we struggle with? It's just the follow-up of like, I don't deserve to still be struggling in this.
But what happens when you start working on your flaws, but your flaws benefit so many other people, and when you start working on your flaws, it's going to interrupt a lot of relationships. So it makes you like, you gotta like, I better not do that, because I may lose him, or I may lose her as a friend, or they may not talk to me anymore. It's going to, what happens when you make when you start making that change and you start doing that?
If it's something where if we're doing something good for ourselves and all of a sudden the circle that we had gets smaller, that was supposed to happen. For us, our life is our biggest experiment. Just like in school, we had a science experiment, we collect our data, we have a hypothesis, we have all these different things. Every test or thing that we put ourselves through, we're collecting evidence. We're figuring out what works and what doesn't work. When we have those failures, say we did put ourselves out there and it was terrible, like we didn't do good. Okay, we know that this doesn't work. That doesn't mean we don't keep conducting experiments. If we go and we do something, we set a boundary, because that's something that everybody struggles with, is boundaries. Say we set a boundary and all of a sudden somebody has something negative to say about it. Do we feel good about this boundary? Is this helping us in how we feel mentally? Do we feel more confident? Do we feel good about ourselves? If they don't feel good about it, it means that it disrupted whatever we did to make them comfortable. It's okay for us to take that back. If it was someone that was supposed to be there, they would appreciate and receive it. They would foster, they'd continue to fuel and encourage that boundary.
Oh, Ashley, that's good, girl. That is good. Okay, hold on. Let me get to this question right here. Ashley, how do you navigate difficult cases and clients when a client is met with learned helplessness? Oh, let me finish reading what she says here. That's the question. So take time to think. As a friend of yours and clinician and I can't even say that word, in the field, I know that the weight of being a mental health provider can be emotionally and physically taxing when we are so complex to measures as human beings. Okay, so I understand that. So how do you navigate difficult cases and clients when a client is met with learned helplessness? What is learned helplessness?
Learned helplessness is something when people, they for whatever reason feel like in their life they are the victim.
Oh,
whatever happens to them, whatever it is, they have no choice but to just sit there and take the beating, take whatever frustrations people are putting on them, whatever roles, responsibilities, and they're just like, well, I have no other choice. It's what's expected of me.
That's a comfortable place. It's the story you've always told yourself.
It's the story that those people around you have told yourself about you.
Well, you've believed it.
Yeah.
And so it becomes comfortable believing it, even though it's uncomfortable being in it.
Okay. But I feel like whenever you have someone that has that learned helplessness, usually it's just in certain situations of their life. There are certain areas of their life where they're just kind of like, oh, I can't do anything about this. I can't do anything about this. The first thing that I'd like to bring to the table is, if those are the areas that you're uncomfortable with, what are the areas that you are comfortable with? And it could be something small. It could be something that they do. It could be their work. It can be whatever rituals that they have for themselves. And I think a lot of it comes from like dismantling the beliefs that I can only be comfortable in this portion of my life. This portion of my life has to be dedicated to being uncomfortable for whoever, even for yourself. Sometimes it can be that way. And so I think the way that we distribute in our mind the areas that we're comfortable and the areas that we're uncomfortable, it's worth it to be able to shake it up every now and then. Like sometimes, again, we get so comfortable with living in a routine, getting in like a rut sometimes where it's just kind of like, this is what I do in the morning. This is what I do here. But if it gets to be at a point where life is predictable and we keep hearing the same things from people, sometimes it could be at a point where someone's calling and you know exactly what they're calling about.
Yeah, I'm telling you, girl. So you just don't answer the phone because you're just like, I already know what they're going to say. I know exactly the way this conversation is going to go. And I can quote it word for word. And yeah.
But I think when it comes to that, when you hear and you know that pattern, and in therapy, you've established that pattern, usually a therapist is going to be able to point that out. It's like, oh, I've noticed whenever you talk about this person, this is the same problem that we're having. Whenever you talk about doing this one activity, this is the same thing that we're doing. And sometimes it just takes being able to be like, sometimes like they're in denial where they're just like, no, like, what do you mean? Like, that's not what's happening. It's this. It's about challenging with certain questions to be like, why do you feel like it has to be this way? Have we explored another way that we could approach this? Do we feel like we can only approach this because they told us this is how they want us to approach this way? Or is this a choice that we're making on our own for ourselves? Sometimes we just let people control the dialogue of our life.
Okay, see, now let me get an extra level of comfort. Come on, girl, because you're really just scolding me right now. So
So whenever people tell us that this is how you need to be, this is the best version of you, this is whatever that they are enjoying of you, um, if there's someone that's close to us, usually we're naturally like, oh, I trust that. Like, oh, it must be for my betterment. It must be for this. Um, and it's so comfortable to be able to be like, oh, because this is a person that's been in my life. Sometimes it's family. Usually it's family. To be very honest, in a lot of cases, it's somebody in their family where it's like, I grew up with this person. It's my
Yeah.
sibling. It's this, where it's like, it becomes so normal that it takes a lot of unlearning in therapy to be able to be like, they always ask us to do this. How can we do this? Say at 6 o'clock, they come home and they call us to be able to vent about their day and it takes an hour. What if we just tried to delay the call? What if we're just like, oh, hey, I'll get back to you. And then if they call back again at that time, and like see how they respond. Is it the same? Have they already processed it in their head where maybe they got less to say?
You know what? That's actually pretty good. So that's not you avoiding the call. That's you reach. Hey, Tanya, I can use that. I like that.
Got you calling out people over here.
I can use that. I can. That's really good. I hadn't even thought about that
Yeah.
because and you almost people become so comfortable with you being their you become their crutch.
Yeah.
And so they don't have to do any work because they've gotten so comfortable with you being the one here. Now tell me what I did, and dumping it all on you. And it's making you uncomfortable, but you have to, we go through all of these obligations and all these other emotions, but you just really just broke that up. You know what? Why don't you delay that call and give them a little bit of extra time to think about it and say, oh, that's good.
More often than not, you repeat the same stuff. More often than not, they have the same stuff that they're complaining about.
So is the problem when you find yourself constantly in that, are they comfortable or are you comfortable? Because now it's comfortable for you to take that call because it's something that again, it's become a routine. Oh God, I'm just hearing myself say it. It has become a routine. Even though this is not what you want, you have become comfortable with this behavior, with this thing. So again, are they comfortable or are you comfortable, or have you made it comfortable for the both of y'all? And now it's time to break this whole thing up.
More often than not, it's almost like, especially like when she was asking the question about people who are like mental health providers and there's people around you constantly asking you these questions. Just because of like your job, people feel like, oh, this is the best person to ask because this is
Yeah.
what she does.
Yeah.
And so in the beginning, when you're in the field, sometimes you do have that obligation. Like I've fallen victim to that myself, where it's like when I was initially in practice talking to people, I'd have a lot of people in my personal life being like, oh, how do you handle this? How do you do this? What is this? And next thing you know, an hour has gone by and it's like, oh, that's a whole therapeutic session right there.
That they didn't pay for. And you giving me one right now, and I ain't paying. I'm sorry.
And so I think it's like at that point too, again, it had to get to a point where I was uncomfortable with it. Sometimes people come with you for quick stuff. They're just like, hey, do you think I'm doing this right? Do you think I'm doing it? By all means, answer their question, do what you need to do. But it's at that point where it's like, if they're the one that's continuing to talk and you realize that you don't get a chance to be able to be like, oh, this is how my day was. And it was just, oh, this is my homework for you. I'm glad you got this and stuff. That's when we need to be able to revisit that conversation. Like in this dynamic, there is something that can be tweaked because there is no intentionality back. There's no reciprocity back. So we got to be able to notice the signs of that and be able to be like, how can I shift this? Do I delay the call? Do I make it so that we don't even talk on the phone as regularly? But what if we just have text message conversations with each other?
Maybe I do that in a heartbeat.
We have the freedom to do it. And I think it's like we get so caught up in the pattern and the routine of stuff that we really sell ourselves short. Like, it's almost like, because everything around us in the world is comfortable, like, there's so many things on social media where they're just like, do what makes you feel good. Do this, do that. And it's like, okay, but I could do that all day. Eating cookies makes me feel good. I wouldn't have been able to come up those stairs to do this podcast if I kept doing all the things that made me feel good. It's like,
No, you're absolutely right. And there, and somebody had asked a question, um, or it was something to that effect. Because you were talking about suffering and no, you were talking about intentionality, and they were talking about how you got to get comfortable suffering. But I think we were talking about how all suffering is not bad if it's intentional.
like, you always have to have a why. You only find your why when you sit with yourself. Once you have that thing that kind of like lights a fire in you, once you have that thing that like makes you feel full, that not only can you give to somebody else, but you feel like you're giving to yourself by doing that. It lights that fire. It lights like that channel of questions that kind of makes that, how can I do this? How can I tap into this a little bit more? What are things that I could do right now that prepares me for this? And again, it's not a big drastic thing. It can be as simple as, I'm going to look outside the door. I'm going to stand outside the door. I'm going to sit in an environment that maybe one day I get to speak at. I'm going to sit at a place that maybe one day I get to perform at.
But it's not always comfortable when you're doing it. But it's doing it, as you were saying, is doing it with intentionality. If I like working out,
Yeah.
working out is it's good, but it's some suffering.
And you start small.
You do.
You do.
And you recognize that this is uncomfortable,
Yeah.
but and I'm hurting or I'm tired, but it's intentional because it's taking me somewhere.
Yeah. You can't lose sight of the reason you're doing something. The moment you just get into a pattern of doing something and you don't know what it's for, that's when you get to be at that point where it's like you're a secondary person in the movie of your life.
I remember when I had that aha moment, and I was talking to God, and He simply just said, "You need to become the lead character in your own life and give everybody else back their role. You're supposed to be a supporting actor in their life, but you have it backwards because you're supporting in your own life and you're trying to play the lead character in everybody else's life, and they sitting back playing a supporting role in their own life. You got this backwards, sis." I was like, well, and it was hard letting go of all the places of control that I always had, that power in that word, and being quiet. It was uncomfortable even being quiet. I had to get comfortable with being silent because I had to give them back their role and I had to take the role in my own life. It's just
It's a lot of work, but it's worth it.
question. How do you transition from working a job to walking in your purpose? That's a good question. Whoever asked that one.
Wow. Sometimes how do you transition from your job and walking into your
How do you transition from working a job to walking in your purpose?
So when you work your job, if you're blessed enough to have a position where like what you do is what you're meant to do, it's something that you're passionate about, is something that you can do that like gives back to people, that refuels you and stuff, then you're already ahead of the game and you can tap into that. But a lot of us, again, because we were so comfortable with the idea of like what's practical, what's this, usually we're not working a job that's like that stirs something in us that we feel really passionate about. I think in the jobs that we work, and the stuff that we do outside, just as much energy that we put into our job, we have to be able to allocate that type of energy for us outside of our job. Even if it's something where it's like you have to do it immediately after. Like for me, whenever I was working in the hospital and I didn't have that outlet and I just come back home, I want to crash out. I want to sleep and try to do whatever I could to just wake up the next day and repeat the pattern. It had to be something where, like, when I decided to go do that class, it was immediately after work. It was right across the street. So I had no excuse. I could easily change over there, come back home, beat traffic, do whatever. And so sometimes it takes like that small change. It takes that small change that kind of helps foster the confidence that allows you to go into things that go beyond the typical 8 to 5. And whatever that is, if you have the people around you that can kind of help you explore that, or if you tap into something new that's like totally out there, just based on what's available. Sometimes like we are presented with opportunities, but we're not seeing it as something that's tangible for us to do.
Okay.
So
So let's say that I'm making a living. I'm making a living working in the legal profession. I'm gonna use me, so I won't criticize absolutely nobody. I'm making a living working in the legal profession, but I feel that my purpose is to be helping to start a nonprofit and to be helping women paint their face. Okay, so I'm in the legal profession. I need to be. My purpose is this. It's much greater. How do you help women transition, like make that decision? Because the decision is uncomfortable, because working in this legal profession is what's providing for my family. Ooh, we out of time, girl. We done sat here yapping.
oh no.
Dang it. Okay, we're gonna answer this because I'm gonna get my question out. We're gonna answer this question off camera, and then I'll post it for everybody, because I'm gonna get my question out because this follows this question that that they just asked. Ashley, I want to thank you so much for joining me tonight. Sitting here yapping, I mean, talking good. Thank you so much. Before we go, can you talk with our audience about, one, what you got going on and how they can connect with you and work with you? Can you tell us that?
Yes. So you can connect with me if you wanted to be able to book a session on www.sohhaw.com. Company name is Seeds of Healing Health and Wellness. You can also reach me on my Instagram account _SOHHAW_. Or you can email me at ashley@sohhaw.com. And we can schedule a 15-minute consultation to just kind of establish if we feel like we'd be a good fit for each other, and we can kind of go from there.
Ashley, thank you so much. I mean, you have dropped, I don't even know how I'm going to just, cut all of this together so that I can just I need to create one of them, because you've dropped so many good gems. It's just been so rich and so enlightening. And I thank you so much for your kindness and just your sweet disposition. And I know that this is even uncomfortable for you. This is not so, being in front of the camera is not something that you normally like to do, but you stepped out of what's comfortable to do something that's uncomfortable and go forward. And I just appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much.
I love you, my darling.
I love you too.
I want to thank our entire audience for joining us on tonight. I hope that you have enjoyed this conversation with Ashley. You will be able to watch the replay. It will be up on our YouTube. If you are not following us now, please go to our YouTube, Next Level Conversations, and subscribe to our page so that you have access to all of our great shows. We've been talking about a myriad of things to help you abound and move forward in life. Join us next week. Liz Gabriel will be here joining us to talk with us about how to overcome and keep from being distracted by attractive distractions. So again, we have a theme going. We're going forward. We're moving forward this year in our life. So make sure you join us next Wednesday, 7 p.m. here on the WinWinWomen.tv network. Until then, I want to let you know that I love you and I appreciate you. Go be great.